Now, my next guest has an endless list of accolades. I'm going to try and keep it short. Comedian, musician, actor, composer, and on and on. You might know him as the eyeliner-wearing, hair-sprayed cabaret comedian, but he's also the brains behind the songs of Matilda, one of the most successful musicals of the last 20 years, indeed, of all time, winning a record 7 Olivier Awards and 5 Tonys. Following a hugely successful run in 2016, he's now bringing back, in a sort of Groundhog Day moment, the musical adaptation of that film, Groundhog Day, a hilarious, that's what it says in my script, a moving story, I'd say, about a man forced to live one day over and over and over again. Let's have a quick listen.
There's nothing more depressing than small town USA, and small don't come much smaller than Punxsutawney on Groundhog Day.
Did I mention he's also on tour at the moment, and somehow he's found time to join us here in the studio. The legendary Tim Minchin joins me now.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Tim Minchin. Last time we talked to each other, we were talking about you adapting your musical Matilda into a movie. Mm-hmm. And now we're talking about you adapting a movie into a film.
Yeah.
But this one is perhaps a less seamless journey than Matilda. Matilda seemed to just kind of escalate and rise and, float. This story of Groundhog Day is kind of one of perhaps resilience and determination, because you opened it 8 years ago.
Yeah, 7 years ago. We opened at the Old Vic, and it was developed there and directed by Matthew Warchus, who's the director at the Old Vic. And then it caught the eye of a very powerful Broadway producer who convinced us, slightly against our instinct, to go straight to Broadway with it. Against our instinct, because Broadway's, scary and sort of... It's very business, and our musical's very sort of detailed and heartfelt and... bit highbrow, lowbrow, there's lots of big ideas, but it's funny and a little bit dark and quirky and jokes, but with a huge heart, and it definitely works as a piece of popular theatre. But we worried it was I don't know. We didn't know, but it got to Broadway and it got lots of nominations and amazing reviews and lasted 6 months, which all sounds good, but Broadway is Broadway, and that means you don't make, you need to last 5 years before you really make your money back. And so that gets assessed as not a success, which is an absurd idea, obviously, to measure a piece of art by whether or not it makes its investors back its money on Broadway. And then we just thought, well, we'll come back to London, and then lots of stuff happened. We lost our producer, Andrei Tajinsky, very sadly, very suddenly. We didn't lose him as a producer, we lost him as a person. He died, and that sort of broke our hearts for a while, and then along comes COVID and all the other things that have happened to everyone over the last few years. So suddenly it's 7 years and we're back at the Old Vic, and now it's got all these amazing reviews, and it looks like we might get to the West End, although, I shouldn't say that out loud because... I don't believe in cursing things, but yeah.
Are you good at dealing with setbacks? Because that was obviously a setback, and I feel that perhaps there's part of you that just goes, well, I'm not going to have this. I'm not going to put up with it. I'm going to push on through and prove them wrong.
Well, look, sometimes you do something that lands, and you can be proud of things in lots of different reasons. And the different things I've done over the years, I don't have trouble distinguishing between what I see successful artistically. I Upright, my TV show, which not a huge percentage of Brits have watched because it was on Sky and Now TV. You can still watch it. But critically acclaimed, and people absolutely love it and write me all these letters about how it's their favourite thing ever. But it didn't get a huge audience, and I have no problem with that. It's its own little beautiful thing. And then on the other end of the scale, we've got Matilda, which has become a sort of phenomenon. And I'm so lucky to be involved in any of this stuff. I don't have a problem with setbacks. I have a difficulty with what I perceive to be injustice. So if I think someone's screwed with me, if I think there's been some skullduggery or some unfairness in everything in my life and in the people I love, in my friends, if I think someone's done them an injustice, I have a fairly swollen injustice module in my brain, so I get a bit self-righteous and unbearable. But I think Groundhog Day, Matthew and me and Danny and all the creatives just knew it was a good piece and it was worth not giving up on. And so it seems to be the case now. We've made it better as well. So
That's so interesting, because that means that Matilda is really your story, because that is a story all about injustice and absolute determination.
Yeah, she had a lot. I'm very privileged compared to Matilda. Not as privileged in brain, but more privileged in upbringing.
What about Groundhog Day then? Is that also your story? Because everyone wants the chance perhaps to go back and change things. And in fact, increasingly nowadays, I feel like we live in a world which is very revisionist. Everyone sort of judges things that happened in the past on the basis of how they see them today.
Yeah.
So that making it even more of a story for our times in a way.
I think so. I mean, God, that you've just opened a door or several doors to several conversations. Certainly, throughout history, all cultures have had central to their idea of their faiths and their cultures the idea that a person is, you get your heart measured against a feather at the end of your life. People understand that people are good and bad, and what you want is to be more good than bad. And the idea of redemption and forgiveness have been very, very popular. I think it is an unusual time in that it's sort of untrendy to believe in redemption and the idea that people are both good and bad. I, of course, still believe in those good old ideas.
So you're saying you think it's a pretty polarised world at the moment.
Well,
and people are judged perhaps on things that need to be seen in a different context, or should be contextualised.
Yeah, it's mostly, again, huge conversation, but the manner in which we communicate about injustice. So I understand exactly why it's happening. The mechanism by which we communicate about our sense of injustice is through social media apps that prioritise the most aggrieved and the most outraged, and we've made the mistake of thinking that's what we should respond to. So the media reads Twitter rather than... So we're not... Yeah, I mean, I'll be the millionth middle-aged privileged dude to say there's a problem with nuance, but it's not that the kids are wrong. It's that they perhaps don't understand the level to which our digital way of communicating is distorting how we see each other and dehumanising one another. But Groundhog Day is definitely a story of someone trying to get better, and I think we love two types of stories: one that Matilda exemplifies and one that Groundhog Day does. Matilda is a heart of gold, a pure soul who goes out into the world and changes the world for the better. So if something's...
And gets even.
Yeah, and gets even. So she says, if it's not right, you've got to put it right. It's about revolution. It's a musical about revolution, intellectual revolution, and just standing up to bullies. And then there's another story we love, which is a person with a heart of coal, like A Christmas Carol, like Scrooge, right, who needs to go out into the world and have the world improve them. So they have to learn to be good. And we love those stories because they're actually more like us, and they're harder to tell because they're redemption stories. And Groundhog Day specifically says, in order to be happy and kind, rather than changing the world, you need to change the way you're seeing it. And both those things are true. You need to be a revolutionary when you see injustice, but you also need to change your view to see beauty in the things around you and to see people for who they are and all that. So I'm quite proud of them as two pieces that balance each other out, like I said, as scales.
And how do you set out, Groundhog Day, obviously a very successful movie and very hard, actually, until you've seen your musical, to imagine it without Bill Murray's rather bemused face.
Yeah, that's right.
So how do you tackle, I mentioned that, last time we talked, you were talking about the film adaptation of a musical. Now we're talking about the musical adaptation of a film.
Yeah.
How do you approach the film? And do you look for the themes, the things that stand out to you? Do you try and find something new there?
The first thing you do is try and work out whether it should be a stage musical, and my answer is not nearly always no. In fact, film to stage is problematic in all sorts of ways, and they're often very cynical. It's like, well, people love that 80s film, let's just put it on stage and they'll come. And that's all right. That's not what we did here. I think Groundhog Day is an almost Greek epic. It's an amazing morality tale, and it has the capacity to carry a lot more thematic weight than the movie. The movie was a rom-com, and it's brilliant because of that. But if you're going to put it on stage, you're like, well, what do these people think and feel that will be able to turn into a bigger, deeper story? Because when people sing, they're revealing more about how they think about the world. So you need a narrative where the characters telling you more about their internal world will improve it, not damage it. And we believe very strongly that Groundhog Day was that. And the great gift I've had is Danny Rubin, who wrote the original screenplay of the film 30 years ago, wrote this musical with us. So he had the brain behind the entire concept. and he's an amazing guy. It was really hard, and it's a really deeply unusual musical. I mean, it still does what great musicals do, I think. It makes your heart soar at the end, soar like an eagle, not soar like a
It's not like, "Ow, pain,
like a
ouch."
bunion.
Thanks for making that clear.
Yeah, that's right. Makes it soar. But it is, in order to set up the premise of these repeated days, it was a huge musical challenge, which famously Sondheim had a look at and thought, I'm not sure if it's doable. And he might still be right, but certainly if our very generous reviews of last week are anything to go by, it lands.
You said something that interested me there about that, that when people sing things, they have to reveal what they're feeling. Do you think that they have to do that more so? And do you think that that's where, there's always people who say, I don't like musicals. And then they start naming a couple they like. And then suddenly it's quite a long list of musicals they like. And there is this sense that they're a bit saccharine, a bit maudlin.
Oh, my God, yeah. You're talking my language, yeah. I find musicals quite difficult. I mean, I think theatre at its best in general. Look, I'm not one of these theatre makers who go, theatre saves the world. Everyone needs to go to the theatre. I mean, it's not very accessible to a lot of people. But to the extent that we work very hard to make theatre accessible, I mean, it is a bit of a juggle. But my experiences of seeing stories told on stage by live actors, it's not always easy. It's not like a movie where you just keep editing it till it's perfect. Every night is a new chance to tell the story. And that's why when it lands, it can be so visceral. I can get so emotional in a really good play, less often in a really good musical, because musicals hold me at arm's length. I'm not a natural musical goer. I don't want someone to just show off their range and sort of sob and be hyper demonstrative with simple lyrics where you rhyme dove with love and that's enough. I'm just not. I'm sounding condescending, maybe I am, but I get it. I get why musicals can jar. I think if you're not sure about musicals, this one's for you. And if you are sure, this one's for you too. I mean,
How do you break the barrier then? You said musicals keep you at arm's length. How do you break that barrier?
Well, you work really, really, really hard to make sure that the segue between dialogue and song is seamless and it creeps up on you, that it feels motivated, and that when the person sings, in my musical theatre theory, which I made up, but I'm sure is a reflection of other stuff. I made it up as in that I never studied the form. I never studied music particularly, but you make sure when a character sings, they're telling you something about their personal character journey that you want to know, that you need to know, that will increase your empathy for them or increase your contempt for them or whatever you want. Something about the story, so it forwards the story, so everything doesn't stop, and something about us. And that's when it's good, when someone's singing and you're like, that character's feeling this, and that reminds me of how I feel when ... They have that potential to be metaphorically powerful, to really make you feel emotionally connected to not just what the person's going through, but how that reflects what we all go through, right? And that's Groundhog Day is an epic, it's a how are we to live story. How do we get through it? How do we be kind? How do we be happy? What is the meaning of life? And it's got songs about the inevitability of death and about, it's both epic and very, very silly and fun.
A bit like life, really.
A bit like life, epic and stupid.
Epic and stupid. If you had your chance again, what would you revisit and change?
In the musical or in my life?
No, in life. No.
I'm not wired for regret because I am a determinist, so I think there's an unbroken chain of determined events between the Big Bang and this conversation now. And so it doesn't make sense to me to regret because the things that happened because of everything that happened before it. But I'm also very driven to try and be a good chap, and I don't always get it right. So I guess there's things that, I don't know. I mean, you want to always make sure all your interactions with other humans are positive for the other human. I don't know if that's a healthy thing, but that's my greatest fear, is that I'll make someone feel bad or something, So to the extent that I've had, like we all have conflicts in my life, I guess I wish they didn't happen, but there's always outcomes that they necessitated or something that turn out to be positive. So
do you think it gets harder the more successful you are as well? Because
do you?
Yes, I do. I do. Because I think, and I see it more and more with people, hugely successful people. That they have enormous confidence in the sound of their voice and their opinion and their rightness of what they're doing. I'm not talking
should I be taking notes, Mariella?
No, I'm just interested in that idea of revisiting things, because you're talking about, how you come across, how you make people feel. And I do think that there's a sort of license given to people as they become successful, particularly sort of publicly successful, that you have to be kind of aware of as a person all the time, that you're being given a little bit of extra license. And some people, I'm sure you've come across them as well, are less aware of the fact that it's a sort of privilege.
Yeah, and then you can do the thing that I run the risk of doing, which is being so self-reflective and analytical that I lose sight of the fact that no one really cares, Tim. Just get on with it, make your stupid songs and be a nice chap, stop unpacking the difficulty of privilege, But then again, I'm 20 years into the signal coming at straight white men is to check your privilege, and unfortunately that doesn't land on a lot of people who need to hear it, and it lands really hard on kind of people who studied feminism in the 90s, it's like, oh God. So you do get a bit obsessed by unpacking your privilege, and because of my sort of deterministic attitude, I don't only think some of my life is a privilege. I understand it to be utterly luck. Every single tiny bit of advantage I have, privilege or goodness, is all luck. My ability to work really hard. Everyone's like, but you've worked really hard. I'm like, that's luck. My ability to work hard is luck. My desire to work hard is luck. So I have the sense of privilege I have is a burning, almost guilt type of sense of privilege. So, but again, listen to me. Who cares? You're right, mate.
Well, we care. That's why we got you into the studio, isn't it?
But it does connect to the work, I mean, the solution is always to stop looking inwards and to start wondering how other people are feeling. And Groundhog Day, it's a tale for everyone. It is about a sort of grumpy, middle-aged white dude, but it's not about that. It's not about the politics of now. It's about the story of humanity. It's about trying to figure out how to be less selfish for everyone.
And while Groundhog Day plays out at the Old Vic, you're playing out across the nation, and I think indeed popping over to Ireland as well, because you're on tour. So do you have a kind of penchant for attention, do you think, a bit?
Are you joking? Have you seen me? People like me are built of that penchant. But I like to think there's more to it than that. But yeah, it's just what I do. And
what made you want to go in? I mean, you've clearly worked. What's a shock to you?
That people watch me and stuff. But I went really hard at it. But I don't know why. I was just okay at playing piano and using words. And I didn't grow up thinking you're allowed to be an artist. And I didn't get anywhere till my late 20s. I got rejected by every agent in Australia, and I was writing a lot of music for youth theatre for free or for $500 or, eventually $5,000, but it was not a living. I wasn't paying the rent after I got married, And so when I got a sniff, when I came to Edinburgh and people started saying this guy's got something, and then Matilda, I just went, well, this is such a stroke of luck. I'm going to go as hard as I can. And I slightly it's like I'm stuck in that gear. But really what happened is I realised I had to be over here for Groundhog Day and press and to talk to wonderful people like you. And I thought I'm going to be in London for 4 weeks. And I'm not very good at sitting around. I tend to see all my friends and drink a bit much and then wake up and feel sad. And I thought I need to work. And it's been 15 years since I just sat with a piano and played songs. And I've been on this long journey of trying to extract myself from the capital C comedian box, not because I'm very grateful for comedy, but it's not, I've kind of moved on. So I just put these shows on, and they're called An Unfunny Evening with Tim Minchin and his piano. But of course, once I've got a mic in my hand, it's very entertaining. But I'm doing 25 years worth of, I played 22 songs the other night, and I'm just talking about whatever comes to my head. I'm reflecting on the songs. It's really it's an experiment in seeing how present I can be in the room with my audience. And it's like gonad shrinkingly scary, but I really want them to be with me when I'm playing like I play in my lounge room, where everything's a choice, everything's an interpretation, there's nothing fixed. It's the way I play music anyway. Every time I approach one of my songs, I know how it goes, but I go, okay, I'm going to start up an octave, or maybe I'll change the key on my ass and like make me more on the ball and stuff. And I thought I'd like to see what audiences thought of being in the room while I did that, and they've been going really well.
And when you put all your work together like that, which you have to do, even if the bits in between the terrifying bit, the bits that are terrifying are the bits that aren't pre-planned, as it were. When you put all your work together like that, what does it tell you about your work? What connects it, do you think?
See, that's what I'm talking about on stage. And because this was
Is it?
A little bit like, and this will sound really indulgent, but maybe there's something in it for people. Like, I put this tour, it's only 15 dates or something, on sale 2 weeks ago. I had the idea 3 weeks ago, so I had no plan. And I went on my way to London a couple of weeks ago. I went to Perth and visited my family, and my mum's not well, and so I'm trying to get there as much as I can. And I sat in the school chapel of where I went to school, this beautiful chapel, and played this beautiful piano. I rang up the school and said, can I borrow a piano? And they said, well, the chapel's free until a funeral at 1, but you'll have to be out by 1. It'd be weird if you turned up to your funeral and I was there playing piano. Wouldn't be the first time, mind you. And I sat there and played all these songs from 25 years, 30 years of songwriting, 35 years of songwriting. And what I realised is I write best when I'm writing from other people's points of view. And I went, that's why I ended up in theatre. Not because I always wanted to just like write songs and get them on the radio and have a band. But I'm quite storytelling, and I actually am better at evoking emotions when I write from other people's point of view. And that was quite an emotional realisation, because I'm like, why is that?
Yeah, and why is that?
Because I didn't grow up thinking you're allowed to be an artist. So when I write about myself, it's full of irony, which is the British and Australian way. And that's okay. But what a gift to be able to shed all the irony and stuff and write from the heart through the mechanism of writing from the point of view of a 60-year-old woman who can't express herself in one of the songs I play on stage from an old musical I wrote years ago, or from the point of view of Nancy in Groundhog Day, who sings a song about being stuck in a role of playing she calls herself a perky-breasted, giggling one-night stand, and being stuck in that role and not being able to get out of it, or being able to write from the point of view of someone who's suicidally sad. And it's amazing. And I've realised what I'm talking about on stage is the privilege of walking in other people's shoes, which in turn is what theatre is. It's why we do it. It's why we read stories. It's what art is. It's like, what would it be like to be someone else? And that's why I care about it. And that's why, without being like, oh, theatre's changing the world, but cumulatively culture helps us understand what it is like to be one another. And as soon as we stop doing that and end up on our phones just talking about what gang we're in big trouble.
Well, beautifully put. Thank you very much. Tim Minchin, always a delight to talk to you. I think this might be the third time we've talked since.
Just do it every year.
Once
a year, whether we need it or not.
I'd love that. We always need it.
Yes.
That was comedian, composer and lyricist Tim Minchin. Groundhog Day is on at the Old Vic in London now, and you can catch him on tour as well. Go on, what was it called?
I don't think you can, actually, because it's all sold out.
Oh, is it all sold out?
But I'll try and add dates. But just keep an eye out for it. I'm going to start doing these solo shows.
That's really annoying. You can't
sorry.
That.
Groundhog Day tickets are still available, but they're selling out fast too.
The very annoying Tim Minchin. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for coming into the studio.
Thank you so much.